in this report.
U.S. President Donald Trump's administration on Thursday revoked Harvard University's ability to enroll international students and is forcing existing students from overseas to transfer to other schools or lose their legal status. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem has ordered the university's Student and Exchange Visitor Program certification be terminated and accused Harvard of, quote, fostering violence, anti-Semitism, and coordinating with the Chinese Communist Party. Harvard rejected the allegations, calling the move unlawful. The clampdown on foreign students marks a significant escalation of the Trump administration's campaign against the elite Ivy League university in Cambridge, Massachusetts, which has emerged as one of Trump's most prominent institutional targets. The move comes after Harvard refused to provide information that Noem had previously demanded about some foreign student visa holders who attend the university, the department said. In the 2024-2025 school year, Harvard enrolled nearly 6,800 international students, amounting to 27% of its total enrollment, according to university statistics. Trump, a Republican, has undertaken an extraordinary effort to revamp private colleges and schools across the U.S. that he says foster anti-American, Marxist, and radical left ideologies. He has criticized Harvard in particular for hiring prominent Democrats to teaching or leadership positions. Trump has frozen some $3 billion in federal grants to Harvard in recent weeks, leading the university to sue to restore the funding.
Minister of External Affairs S Jaishankar once again on Thursday countered US President Donald Trump's claims about brokering a ceasefire between India and Pakistan, saying the understanding was reached bilaterally without any US role and after the army brass of Pakistan initiated the call to India's DGMO. Now, while speaking to Dutch public broadcaster NOS, S Jaishankar reiterated that India's retaliatory strikes on Pakistan's air bases compelled the Pakistani military to accept that we need to stop firing at each other. However, Jaishankar admitted that he himself and Prime Minister Narendra Modi were in touch with US Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Vice President J.D. Vance throughout the four-day military escalation. He added nations from West Asia and other regions were also involved in talks aimed at diffusing tensions between the two nuclear-armed neighbors. Jaishankar said, and I quote, "When two countries are engaged in a conflict, it is natural that countries in the world call up and try to sort out, indicate their concern. But the cessation of firing and military action was something which was negotiated directly between Pakistan and India. We made one thing very clear to everybody who spoke to us, not just the US, but to everybody, saying if the Pakistanis want to stop fighting, they need to tell us. We need to hear it from them. The general has to call up our general and say this, and that is what happened." That's the exact quote from External Affairs Minister S Jaishankar. The minister also added that only issues India is willing to discuss with Pakistan is the return of Pakistan-occupied Kashmir as well as ending terrorism. And a big development to the hailstorm hit Srinagar-bound Indigo flight on Wednesday evening. Reports now suggest that the pilot initially sought Lahore Air Traffic Control's permission to briefly use the Pakistan airspace to avoid turbulence, but that request was rejected by Pakistan. The flight, carrying more than 220 people, encountered a sudden hailstorm, and the pilot reported the emergency to air traffic control at Srinagar Airport, following which it did land safely. Here's what exactly happened. Now, when the flight was flying over Amritsar, remember this was a Srinagar-bound flight originating from New Delhi. When it was flying over Amritsar, it encountered turbulence, prompting the pilot to request permission from Lahore ATC to deviate through Pakistani airspace to avoid the rough weather. However, the request was denied, forcing the aircraft to continue on its original flight path, where it faced severe turbulence, inflicting heavy damage to the aircraft and causing massive turbulence and fear for the passengers inside. Now remember, in the wake of tensions between India and Pakistan following the Pahalgam terror attack that killed at least 26 people, Pakistan airspace is closed for Indian carriers. India has also shut its airspace for Pakistan Airlines. A 5-member delegation of the Trinamool Congress comprising Derek O'Brien, Shagarika Ghosh, among others, was on the same Srinagar-bound flight. The incident of Flight 6E2142 encountering severe turbulence is now being probed by the Directorate General of Civil Aviation. In a hearing at the Delhi High Court yesterday, the centre defended its decision to revoke Celebi Airport Services security clearance. Representing the government, Solicitor General Tushar Mehta argued that national and airport security fall under the centre's plenary powers, calling this a sui generis case unique and deserving of careful judicial scrutiny. He warned of potential security threats across multiple airports, stressing the importance of strict aviation security laws to prevent incidents like onboard explosions. Highlighting Celebi's role in ground handling and cargo operations, Mehta noted the company's access to aircraft and sensitive flight data, especially for international flights. He also said that in matters of national security, procedural hearings may not always be possible, citing past rulings where individual rights were curtailed in the interest of the nation. Now, recently, Union Civil Aviation Minister Ram Mohan Naidu assured measures to protect affected employees and maintain stability in aviation operations. The ministry reaffirmed that the security clearance was revoked to safeguard national security while ensuring uninterrupted airport operations. And now, in what seems like a face-saving move by the IMF, the International Monetary Fund has firmly defended its $7 billion bailout package to Pakistan, saying the country met all conditions required for the latest disbursement. Now, responding to media, the IMF said its executive board was satisfied with Pakistan's progress, clearing a $1 billion payout on May 9th under the extended fund facility. IMF Communications Director clarified that the funds are strictly meant for balance of payment support and are deposited directly into Pakistan's central bank reserves and not for budget financing. She also emphasized that any deviation from agreed reforms could impact future disbursements. Now, the 37-month EFF program was approved in September 2024, with total disbursements so far already at more than $2 billion. IMF also said that it expresses regret on the loss of life and human toll between India and Pakistan and hopes for peaceful resolution of the conflict. Now, negotiations for the India-Oman Free Trade Agreement, officially known as the CEPA or Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, are approaching their final stages. The latest issue that remains to be discussed revolves around Oman's labor policy called Omanization, which requires companies to hire a certain percentage of Omani nationals in the private sector. Now, India is pushing to keep the current Omanization rules unchanged to protect the interest of Indian workers and prevent stricter future regulations after the agreement is signed. Remember, the talks gained momentum following Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal's visit to Muscat this January. Oman is India's third largest export destination in the Gulf region, with bilateral trade reaching around $9 billion last year. Key imports from Oman include petroleum products and urea, which make up over 70% of India's imports from the country. The agreement aims to reduce customs duties and promote trade and investments between India and Oman. Market regulator SEBI is investigating possible serious violations by senior management at IndusInd Bank, which is currently struggling with an accounting fraud scandal. SEBI Chairman Tuhin Kanta Pandey said the regulator is probing securities market violations by bank officials, while the Reserve Bank of India is handling the broader banking-related issues. IndusInd Bank recently disclosed suspected involvement of some employees in fraudulent activities related to its derivatives and microfinance portfolios, as well as balance sheet misstatements. The bank has launched an internal audit and forensic probe revealing that senior officials, including former key management personnel, may have overridden crucial internal controls. Now, following the crisis, CEO Sumant Katpalia and Deputy CEO Arun Khurana resigned last week. Meanwhile, A committee of executives has been appointed to oversee the bank's operations until a new CEO is named. Now, just today, after ride-hailing giant Uber was issued a notice, Ola and Rapido are now under the same scanner of the Central Consumer Protection Authority for allegedly prompting users to pay advance tips in exchange for quicker rides. Consumer Affairs Minister Prahlad Joshi took to social media to express concern, calling the practice unethical and exploitative and a clear example of unfair trade practices. He emphasized that tipping should be a voluntary gesture of appreciation after service, not a fee disguised as a bribe for faster service. Prahlad Joshi also added that fairness and transparency must be upheld across all consumer-facing platforms. Meanwhile, users have reported seeing similar practices not just on cab apps like Ola and Rapido, but also on food delivery services like Swiggy and Zomato. Now, if found guilty, Ola and Rapido could soon be issued formal notices as the CCPA intensifies its crackdown on the digital consumer exploitation. Well, time for a short break right here on Morning Brief at 9. But when we come back, we'll bring you the mood check on Dalal Street as well as a slew of startups that are now looking at the IPO season and going public. All that and more on the other side. You're watching News 9.
This is the drive of your dreams. Introducing the all-new Skoda Kailak. Own your dream.
Skoda.
Mummy says no Anda in summer.
क्यों? तू समर में खेलता नहीं क्या? समर में एनर्जी नहीं लगती क्या? ज्यादा लगती है।
अंडा तो हर सीजन में सुपर हिट है।
सुपरस्टार है ये। सर्दी हो या गर्मी, संडे हो या मंडे।
News never lies.
But on the twisting highways of headlines, every turn brings a new story.
So buckle up for Pune Highway.
Because the story is going to twist at every turn.
Dead body kabhi jhoot nahi bolte.
You will need News 9 to stay with the truth.
Watch News 9.
English news as it should be.
And don't miss our film Pune Highway. In theaters
23rd May.
Back, you're watching Morning Brief at 9. Let's bring you a mood check on the markets. Now remember, US yesterday had closed in a flat, almost green territory a day after markets had taken in the news of potential higher yields in US bonds. So markets in the US had been at par, and that impact seems to be weighing down positively on Asian markets as well as on the Indian markets, both Sensex and Nifty. First, let's bring you the Asian markets and take a quick check on what's going on. Hong Kong's Hang Seng is up about 0.6 of a percentage point, while the Shanghai Composite Index is absolutely flat in trade this morning. Remember, these markets open a few hours before India, and it seems to be a flat session in China, but a positive territory for Hong Kong. Meanwhile, South Korean index KOSPI is also registering healthy gains today. Market is up about 0.2% or so. But that's not the sentiment that we are seeing in Taiwan's TAIEX. TAIEX is down almost 0.1% or so in trade. Better news coming in from Japan's Nikkei 225, which is up about 0.8 of a percentage points. Let's shift focus and talk about the Indian markets. And after yesterday's fall, when the Sensex had dipped about 640 points and Nifty 50 was down more than 200 points, the mood on the Indian markets is flat, but a little better than the sea of red that we had witnessed yesterday. In early trade, it's been just about a few minutes since the markets opened. Nifty 50 is at just about 24,632 levels, while Sensex is barely clinging on to the 81,000 levels. Well, remember, these are still early signs. Markets have only just opened and the mood of the market could change, just like the Delhi and NCR weather as we've seen in the last few days. Meanwhile, the small caps are taking a little bit of a beating this morning, more or less flat, but a little under from where it closed yesterday. Volatility seems to have ebbed a little bit this morning below the 18 levels, which is the average that we've seen in the last few days. So volatility, the fear index below 18 means that there isn't as much fear of the unexpected in the Indian stock markets this morning. Let's look at the Nifty 50 heat map and try and see where is the gain and where is the pain really coming in from. Well, the pain seems to be coming from Sun Pharma this morning. The stock is already down about 4.3% or so, and that seems a little ironic because other health stocks seem to be in the green territory. Possible reasons for this could be the 6th May action that we had seen on Sun Pharma in the US, when almost 10,000 bottles of one of its drugs were to be recalled or sent back. So that could be perhaps a legal ramification of that could be surfacing. That could be one of the reasons why we are seeing this particular stock, Sun Pharma, down about 4.3% in trade. Beyond that, it seems more or less a flat day today. Remember, Reliance had tanked, and in fact the entire energy space had tanked massively yesterday, more than 2% or so, and Reliance, ONGC, Coal India were all in deep red yesterday. That sentiment seems to be a little better today, despite the fact that Reliance is more or less flat. That means it's at yesterday's level. It hasn't really recouped any of the losses that it witnessed yesterday. Meanwhile, ONGC continues to be down again 0.3% or so. Coal India, on the other hand, is slightly in the positive territory. The other sector that had taken a massive beating yesterday was the IT-PAK. Well, that was on news of US Treasury yields rising and the fact that the debt situation in the US was spooking some investors on Wall Street, and that fear had passed on to Indian investors as well. But this morning, a little bit of recovery, at least as far as Infosys and HCL Tech are concerned. Both the stocks are up this morning. Infosys is up about 1% or so. Pretty much a flat news coming in from the rest of the heat map, and that is the status on markets. Remember, any major movement on the stock markets is something that we will continue to track here for you on News 9. And staying with the mood of the markets, is going to be a rejig in the Sensex again, and this rejig is going to spring up some surprises for you. First up, Tata Group Strength Limited as well as India's PSU Bharat Electronics Limited, or BEL, are both set to join the 30 stock BSE Sensex index, replacing IndusInd Bank as well as Nestle India. And this has been announced by Asia Index Private Limited, a BSE subsidiary. These changes will take effect from the start of trading on June 23rd of this year. Now, the index reshuffle is expected to trigger major capital flows as funds are tracking the Sensex adjust their portfolio. Now, Trent could see inflows of around $278 million, while BEL, Bharat Electronics Limited, may receive about $275 million. Now, BEL stock has surged nearly 37% in the past 6 months, highlighting its growing importance, and that has pushed up its valuation and making it among the 30 most valuable companies in India. Remember, the Sensex 30 is a compilation of the 30 most valued companies on India's stock markets. Now, on the other hand, Nestle India and IndusInd Bank are likely to face outflows, with Nestle potentially seeing $210 million moving out, and IndusInd Bank could see about $135 million being pushed out of its valuation. IndusInd Bank has faced pressure due to governance issues and a major fraud scandal, causing its stock to drop sharply over the past year, and for the first time in 20 years reporting a quarterly loss and a massive 71% dip in annual profits for the year ending March 2025. Now, BSE notes that such index rebalancing events are crucial for the market, helping investors understand the flow of funds and ensuring the index reflects the current market trends. Meanwhile, the Security and Exchange Board of India, SEBI, has showed progress on the long-pending National Stock Exchange IPO. SEBI Chairman Tuhin Kanta Pandey said that the remaining issues related to NSE's IPO are expected to be resolved soon, and that the regulator is hopeful the process will move forward shortly. Now, speaking outside the ASSOCHAM conference, Pandey mentioned that SEBI and NSE are currently in talks to address concerns, and he is optimistic about a positive outcome. Remember, NSE filed its IPO prospectus way back in December 2016. Since then, shares of the exchange have remained actively traded in the unlisted market. NSE has made several requests for a no objection certificate from the market regulator over the years, first in 2019, then multiple times in 2020, and most recently even in March this year. Now, in response, SEBI has pointed out concerns related to technological infrastructure, key management personnel, and ongoing litigation, particularly related to the co-location controversy involving NSE. Now, in a positive sign for the National Stock Exchange's board investor appeal, the number of shareholders recently crossed 1 lakh mark, making NSE one of India's largest unlisted entities by investor base. And while the long-awaited NSE IPO is making news, with the SEBI chairman exuding confidence towards resolving all impending issues, it is the startups that seem to be making the most of the primary market turnaround over the last 1 month or so. Now, News 9's Amit Ranjan brings you this exclusive report.
As many as 80 companies are at different stages of approval for their proposed IPOs, a quarter of these belonging to the new age or next frontier sectors: electric mobility, fintech, direct-to-home trade and deliveries, and the like. This after a lull in the IPO space that lasted almost 6 months. The Indian startup space seems to be benefiting most from this bounce back in the primary markets, a reversal that can be attributed to the relative easing of global geopolitical tensions. More and more firms, of which a large percentage are startups, are beginning to aggressively look towards listings and are expediting IPO filings they are likely to make in the times to come. Indian startups seemed to have fallen out of favor among investors in the years 2023-24, largely due to inflated valuations. This scenario too seems to be changing, with them being able to raise as much as 14,418 crores of rupees in funding in February 2025. This was 19.5% more than the amount raised by startups in January 2025, which stood at 11,803 crores of rupees. While this is still less than the amount raised by startups in February 2024, amount which stood at 17,619 crores of rupees, it definitely points to a positive shift in sentiments. This is evident from the fact that the year 2024 witnessed a total of 1.23 lakh crore rupees raised in terms of funding, a figure that was over 27% more than the amount raised by startups in 2023. Little wonder then that some startups like Ather Energy have readjusted their issue size and valuations in order to attract more investor participation. The IPO that came out in the third week of April was oversubscribed 1.5 times, adding to confidence amongst Indian startups. Factors fueling the certitude among startups are the recent ceasefire between India and Pakistan, as well as recent progress in tariffs between US and China, following which the tone of the markets too seems to have become constructive. Picture this. The Sensex had hit an all-time high of close to 86,000 in September 2024, slid 15% to 73,000 in early March 2025, only to bounce back to 82,500 levels by mid-May 2025. This is also why companies are looking more actively towards primary issuance components of their IPOs. With the current momentum, the second half of the calendar year is likely to witness a flurry of IPOs, particularly from companies that had put their plans to go public on hold. Prominent startups that are preparing to enter the primary markets are Zepto, Pine Labs, Lenskart, Grow, Imagine Marketing, which is the parent company of the consumer electronics brand Boat, PhonePe, just to name a few. Others like PhysicsWallah and Urban Company have already filed their draft IPO papers with SEBI. There's positivity in the markets, and startups are back to what they have always been meant to be, in a risk-on mode.
All right, well, a slew of IPOs expected to hit Indian bourses this year. We will keep tracking that for you. Meanwhile, Oil prices slipped on Thursday amid fresh concerns that global supply may soon exceed demand. Brent crude futures dropped 47 cents to settle at just a little under $64.50 a barrel, while US West Texas Intermediate or WTI slid 37 cents to close at about $61.20. The dip followed a Bloomberg report suggesting that OPEC and its allies, collectively known as OPEC Plus, are considering an output hike likely for July, possibly as much as 411,000 barrels per day. No final decision has been made, but the group is expected to meet on June 1st to confirm this strategy. Moreover, adding to the pressure, new US data showed surprise builds in crude and fuel inventories last week due to rising imports and softening gasoline and distillate demand. And on to a programming note now. Well, this guy we are talking about, he's a founding member of one of the fastest growing consumer durable brand in India. And he's in conversation with News 9's Krishna Kumar on the Brandwallas tomorrow. Now, Arindam Paul, the Chief Business Officer of Atomberg Technologies, talks about the company's marketing strategy and its clutter-breaking advertisements. Now, Atomberg, remember, is a pioneer of smart fans which reduce electricity consumption by as much as 65% reportedly. And Arindam has played a key role in growing Atomberg from ground zero to a 100 crore rupee per month revenue company that has also recently ventured into newer categories like smart mixer grinders as well as smart locks. Here's a sneak peek of that episode which will release tomorrow on News 9. It's called The Brandwallas. Take a look.
You are primarily a fan maker, but recently you've launched mixers and grinders, and it looks like you won't stop there. So does that mean that the communication strategy will change from fans to mixer grinders to other product categories you're looking to enter?
I think, of course, yes, because the buyer is different, right? And for a new brand...
Because I'm asking this question because as old as the product is fans, I mean nearly as old are mixers and grinders as well.
No. It's, say, what's very clear is you need to build every category. And I think we are still far away saying what does the mother brand look and what. So I think for now what we'll have to do is we have to build out every category. And our thesis is very simple. There are some core tenets of the brand. Why not is very core to us. Curiosity is very core to us. Our distinctive characters are very core to us. Atom and Berg, the yellow color, the logo and everything. And you will see that consistency everywhere. You go to offline shop, you go to our website, you go to you see any of our ads, that consistency will always be there. So that's a given. But having said that, for every category to build it out. So every category to speak about the benefits, what the features are, what problem is it solving, and how is it better than others. So in mixers, again, the problem that we are solving, invisible problem. Like people were okay with the kind of chutneys they were getting with high speed, which are basically watery chutneys. And the moment you eat a silbatta like chutney, you would say, I want this, I don't want this, right? Yeah. I don't want the watery.
So you're actually recreating the silbatta with a mixer grinder.
Absolutely. And multiple other, for example, today our kitchens are very modern, sleek, modular. You also want a modern, sleek, modular looking mixer grinder. You want a compact mixer grinder. So all of those things, so again, you speak about those benefits, you highlight those benefits, and you layer the brand on top of it. I think that's going to be our proposition. You figure out a problem which is not very common, not very obvious, enter the category with a solution which is way better than existing solutions, solve for it for 2 years, 3 years, build out this thing, take it to a sizable scale, and the moment you do it for 4 or 5 categories, we are still in a second category, then I think people will know us as what we want people to know us, which is basically, we want to be the Tesla of Indian home appliances.
Wow, that's quite the ambition, yes, I must say.
Yes. And that's been the ambition from 10 years back.
Okay.
It's just that we wanted to do things slowly, one thing at a time, one category at a time, one product at a time.
Well, you can catch the full episode of The Brandwallas featuring Atomberg's Arindam Paul this Saturday and Sunday at 4:30 p.m. and 7:30 p.m. right here on News 9. Well, before we slip into a short break, we will bring you all the global headlines that we're tracking for you today. US House narrowly passes sweeping tax and spending bill backing President Donald Trump's policy agenda. US markets end mixed as Treasury yields dip following House passage of Trump's tax and spending bill. "12 US states urge Court of International Trade to invalidate Trump's trade tariffs." US accepts luxury jet from Qatar, eyes fast-track upgrades as new Air Force One for President Donald Trump. UK agrees to transfer Cargo's island to Mauritius, retains control of UK-US military base as PM Starmer calls it absolutely vital for national security. US Parliament approves heavy tariff on Russian, Belarusian fertilizers to safeguard food security, curb war funding. Mass protests erupt in Bolivia over fuel, dollar shortage and inflation. Meanwhile, Walmart announces job reductions in bid to streamline its operations. And Universal's new epic Universal theme park heats up competition with Disney in Florida. These stories and more on the other side of the break. You are watching Morning Brief at 9.
It's final time. Arminia Bielefeld take on Stuttgart. And it's Giant Killers Bielefeld up against Stuttgart. Stiller! The last time they met in the Cup, it finished 6-0 to Stuttgart. It seems unbalanced, but this is the Cup and anything could happen. Four Bundesliga sides have already been knocked out by Bielefeld. Will next season see Bielefeld in Europe? Will Stuttgart be nervous?
Goal! Jamie Laveling got the touch.
These two teams can grab some glory. A team from the 3rd division winning the DFB Pokal, unthinkable. The madness starts at 8 o'clock. In the end, who will lift the cup?
The brand Aparna Sen, it is a fascinating journey.
I've basically pretty much lived on my own terms.
You stood your ground as a woman.
This is how we were brought up.
You've never hesitated to speak your mind out.
There will always be people who will criticize no matter what you do.
You stand up for people. You are not only an actor, you are an activist.
For my cinema, I've tried to always project what I really felt.
What would be your advice to a younger Aparna?
Maybe I could have made more films. Maybe I could have given more outlet to my creative urges.
I see that you are neither tired nor retired.
Is all of these things said to make me nervous?
Watch Radico presents Duologue with Paruntas Season 3 featuring Aparna Sen at these times on News 9. News 9 English News as it should be.
Welcome back. You're watching News 9. A dramatic win for President Donald Trump's policy agenda. The US House of Representatives has narrowly passed a sweeping tax and spending bill by just one vote. This legislation, still awaiting Senate approval, follows intense late-night debates and last-minute changes by House Speaker Mike Johnson to unite his divided Republican ranks. Here's how things unfolded.
Yeas are 215, the nays are 214, with one answering present. The bill is passed.
The US House of Representatives passed a tax and spending bill that would enact much of President Donald Trump's policy agenda by a single vote on Thursday. The reforms still need approval from the Senate before Trump can sign them into law. The House lawmakers debated the bill over 2 successive nights as Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson made tweaks to satisfy various factions of his party. The bill would fulfill many of Trump's populist campaign pledges, delivering new tax breaks on tips and car loans, while boosting spending on the military and border enforcement. It would add about $3.8 trillion to the federal government's $36.2 trillion in debt over the next decade, according to the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office. It sets out the extension of corporate and individual tax cuts passed during Trump's first term and cancels many green energy incentives passed by former President Joe Biden. It would also tighten eligibility for health and food programs for the poor and fund Trump's crackdown on immigration by adding tens of thousands of border guards and creating the capacity to deport up to 1 million people each year.
And Wall Street ended a volatile session yesterday, mostly flat, clawing back early losses after a dip in Treasury yields. The market steadied following the House's narrow approval of President Trump's tax and spending bill. More details in this report.
U.S. stocks closed a choppy session, little changed on Thursday, with the Dow and S&P 500 ending flat, while the Nasdaq edged up about 0.25%. Recent concerns about the U.S. deficit have pushed Treasury yields higher and pressured stocks. U.S. President Donald Trump's tax and spending bill exacerbated those fears, as it could saddle the country with trillions of dollars more in debt. But yields moved lower after the House of Representatives passed the measure, helping stocks erase early losses. Rob Slimer is technical strategist at RBC Wealth Management.
So technically, at least in the short term, interest rates are overbought, bond prices are oversold, and we're starting to get that near-term reversal. It's way too early at this point to conclude that we're still not going to see higher rates. But the fact that the reaction to the bill this morning, I think, is a very encouraging sign.
Stocks on the move Thursday included Snowflake, which jumped more than 13% after the cloud computing firm raised its fiscal 2026 product revenue forecast. While Deckers Outdoor, maker of Ugg boots, which climbed more than 2% at the close, plunged more than 15% in extended trading after the company said it was scrapping its annual forecast on tariff worries. And shares of Ross Stores fell sharply in extended trading after it, too, withdrew its fiscal 2025 forecasts and said tariffs could take a toll on its profitability this year.
And staying with the United States, well, a legal battle is underway over U.S. President Donald Trump's tariff policy. The U.S. Court of International Trade held its first hearing in a lawsuit filed by a dozen states accusing the Trump administration of imposing illegal tariffs. A three-judge panel questioned both sides as State Attorney General pushed to block the so-called reciprocal tariffs announced last month. The Trump administration maintains that tariffs are used to regulate international trade, arguing that the president has the power to declare an emergency and announce measures, and only Congress, not the courts, can determine whether the president's rationale for declaring an emergency complies with the law. In a high-profile development, the United States has accepted a luxury Boeing 747 jetliner as a gift from Qatar, and it's now being considered as the next Air Force One for U.S. President Donald Trump. The Pentagon confirmed that the U.S. Air Force has been tasked with finding ways to rapidly upgrade the aircraft to meet presidential standards.
The United States has accepted a luxury Boeing 747 jetliner as a gift from Qatar. The Air Force is asked to find a way to upgrade it for use as a new Air Force One. That's according to the Pentagon on Wednesday. It said Defense Chief Pete Hegseth accepted the jet for use as Trump's official plane. Washington first announced the Qatari royal family's offer to gift the plane last Monday, when new the jet had a $400 million list price. Analysts say a second-hand 747-8 might fetch a quarter of that. Trump shrugged off ethical concerns last week, saying it would be stupid not to accept the 747-8 jet. On Wednesday, he snapped at a journalist who asked him about the jet during a meeting with South Africa's Ramaphosa.
Announced they would be accepting a Qatari jet to be used as Air Force One.
What are you talking about? What are you talking to respond? You know, you to get out of here. What does this have to do with the Qatari jet? They're giving the United States Air Force a jet, okay? And it's a great thing. You're a terrible reporter.
Accepting the plane raises questions over the scope of anti-corruption laws relating to taking gifts, like the jet, from foreign governments. Congress has accepted gifts in the past, like the Statue of Liberty as a gift from France in 1877. However, one provision in the US Constitution says Congress must sign off on any gift from a king, prince, or foreign state to an elected official. Another provision, referred to as the Domestic Emoluments Clause, prohibits the president from receiving a gift beyond salary for the job. Democrats have sought to block the handover. Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer on Monday said the President of the United States of America officially accepted the largest bribe from a foreign government in American history. Air Force Secretary Troy Mink said at a Senate hearing on Tuesday his branch had been directed to begin planning to address modifications to the plane. The Pentagon has not said how much it will cost or how long it will take. The costs could be significant given the budget for Boeing's current effort to build 2 new Air Force One planes is over $5 billion.
All right, and moving on from the US, well, a historic shift in colonial-era policy as the British government finalized a deal to transfer the sovereignty over the Chagos Island to Mauritius. In return, the UK will retain control of the key US-UK military airbase on Diageo Garcia, the largest and most strategic island in the archipelago. Here's a more detailed report on this landmark deal.
Britain completed a deal on Thursday to cede sovereignty of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius after a London judge overturned a last-minute injunction and cleared the way for an agreement the government says is vital to protect the nation's security. The multi-billion-dollar deal will allow Britain to retain control of the strategically important US-UK airbase on Diego Garcia under a 99-year lease. Lawyers representing Beatrice Pomp, a British national born in the Chagos Islands, were granted an interim injunction at the High Court in the early hours of Thursday. She had criticised the deal for excluding Chagosians in any communication. But following a hearing, the injunction was lifted as the judge said Britain's interests would be substantially prejudiced if it continued. Outside court on Thursday, Pomp and fellow Chagosians vowed to continue to fight the deal. Many Chagosians ended up in Britain after being forcibly removed from the archipelago more than 50 years ago. Critics have also said the deal announced in October is a capitulation that plays into the hands of China, which has close trade ties with Mauritius. In 1965, Britain detached the Chagos Islands from Mauritius, a former colony that became independent 3 years later to create the British Indian Ocean Territory. The base's capabilities are extensive and strategically crucial. Here's British Prime Minister Keir Starmer after signing the deal.
By agreeing to this deal now on our terms, we're securing strong protections, including from malign influence, that will allow the base to operate well into the next century, helping to keep us safe for generations to come.
Recent operations launched from Diego Garcia include bombing strikes against Houthi targets in Yemen and humanitarian aid deployments to Gaza.
On a strong move against Russia, the European Parliament has voted to impose steep tariffs on fertilizers and select farm products from Russia and its ally Belarus. The decision aims to shield EU food security and choke off revenue that could support Russia's war in Ukraine. The new rules will see tariffs on certain nitrogen-based fertilizers jump from 6.5% to nearly 100% over the next 3 years, a level that's expected to effectively stop imports. An additional 50% duty will also hit farm produce from both these nations. Listen in.
The present level of imports from the Russian Federation, competing unfairly in the EU market due to gas price differences, is undermining the EU industry. At the same time, it is essential to ensure that the Union farmers have predictable, sufficient and affordable access to nitrogen-based fertilizers, as this is indispensable to the stabilization of the EU agricultural markets.
All right, and staying with Europe, tensions are soaring in Bolivia's capital, where thousands of protesters, including business owners and citizens, took to the streets to voice anger over rising fuel prices, shortage of US dollars and rising inflation. The unrest reflects growing frustration with the country's economic crisis and lack of policy response. More on the mounting pressure facing Bolivia's leaders in this next report.
Money is tight, salaries aren't enough, everything is expensive. Meat is very expensive, and so is rice and oil. I don't know how we will survive because money doesn't go far. The poorest people don't have anything to eat.
We're here queuing to fill up. Unfortunately, this government is incapable and useless. They do nothing to solve this problem. The only thing they do is fool us and wash their hands, saying everything is fine. But in the end, as you see, nothing is fine. They keep stealing as they please, and nobody says anything. I think we would be better off with a new president with a firm hand.
Now, staying with economic unrest and violence being seen on streets, well, violence also flared outside Argentina's Congress on Thursday after lawmakers failed to reach a quorum needed to vote on a proposed pension hike. Angry protesters gathered in large numbers demanding action on rising living costs and pension support. A report on Argentina's deepening economic crisis.
Clashes between police and protesters erupted outside Argentina's Congress on Wednesday, leaving dozens injured. Video showed officers in riot gear pushing through a crowd that included activists as well as retirees. It broke out after lawmakers had fallen short of numbers needed to vote on pension hikes and continuity of benefits for retirees. Less than half of congressional lawmakers were present. President Javier Milei's government, aiming to curb inflation through spending cuts, opposed both proposals repeatedly in 2024. Milei used his first presidential veto in September last year to block a law raising pensions and adjusting them for inflation. Since Milei took office in late 2023, retirees have been gathering weekly in Buenos Aires to protest against pension cuts. These demonstrations have grown over time, with unions and soccer fans joining the cause. On Wednesday in Congress, opposition lawmaker Paula Oliveto of the center-right Civic Coalition said the country's democracy couldn't turn a blind eye, while pensioners live on about $331 a month. While Socialist Party lawmaker Esteban Paulon condemned what he called an embarrassing scene when lawmakers laughed as the session collapsed. Milei's government argues that its resources are limited, and to increase pensions, the country must first see more investment and economic growth. Government data shows that late last year, 11.3 million people in Argentina lived in poverty. This was down from 53% recorded in the first half of the year.
All right, and on to Walmart next. The retail giant and largest private employer in the US is reportedly cutting around 1,500 jobs as part of a major restructuring plan. The job cuts will affect turns in tech operations, e-commerce fulfillment and advertising. More details in this next report.
Walmart is set to cut around 1,500 jobs. That's according to a memo seen by Reuters. It's a part of a push to simplify operations at the retail giant. The plan will hit teams working in global technology operations and e-commerce fulfillment, as well as the Walmart Connect advertising business. Walmart is a bellwether for the retail sector and the country's largest private employer, with some 1.6 million staff in the U.S. It's also the country's biggest importer, with about 60% of those imports coming from China. That has recently put it on collision course with Donald Trump. He told the firm it should eat the cost of tariffs after Walmart warned that steep duties on Chinese goods would force it to raise prices. The company said those increases would start kicking in from the end of May. It said it was working with suppliers to find substitute goods that are less affected by the levies. But it said that was challenging for goods, including some fresh produce, where it is dependent on imports. Earlier this year, Walmart cut some roles and closed an office in North Carolina as part of a move to focus on its main hubs in California and Arkansas.
Now, for years, Universal Orlando Resort played second fiddle to Disney World in the US. But now, Comcast-owned NBC Universal is shaking things up with Epic Universe, a brand new theme park in Central Florida that's set to debut this week. We leave you with these stunning visuals from Universal's latest launch.
Oh, you guys did the same outfit?
It's out. Yes, the green was out. There's video. There's video. I think I lost the question too. We did just
Jesse.
What is to the nines? In literal terms, it's perfection. But to us, it's not just a phrase, it's an attitude. One that starts at your desk and sends a statement to the world. To the nines is about taking charge. It's a way of life where every seam, every fold, is crafted with excellence. It's timeless elegance and uncompromising quality made for the corner office. It's the ideas that inspire redefining order and elevating the tabletop. To the nines, for the leaders of today and the visionaries of tomorrow.
It's final time. Arminia Bielefeld take on Stuttgart. Giant killers Bielefeld up against Stuttgart. Will Stuttgart be nervous?
Maximilian Grosse!
Arminia Bielefeld have no fear. A team from the 3rd division winning the DFB Pokal, unthinkable. In the end, who will lift the cup?
"64 teams, over 300 of India's top professionals, one unforgettable championship. Hosted by the legend Pullela Gopichand at the Mecca of Indian badminton, the Gopichand Academy. News 9 brought together the biggest names in the corporate world at the News 9 Corporate Badminton Championship 2025. From Infosys to Amazon, the biggest names